After 6 long years without a single vacation, Susan finally allowed herself to rest. She boarded a luxury cruise ship, hoping for silence, comfort, and anonymity. But the moment she stepped into cabin 814, something felt off. The shower didn't work. At first, she stayed calm. She called for a steward, who promised it would be fixed soon. Hours passed, 4 of them. No repair, no explanation. Tired and irritated, Susan asked for a supervisor. That was when Michael Landon, the ship's director, arrived in person. He glanced at the bathroom and casually said the repair would only happen in 3 days at the next port. Something hardened behind Susan's eyes. She stood her ground, but Landon didn't. He mocked her, dismissed her, called her just another difficult, spoiled passenger, and told her to be quiet. The argument burned hot and personal until other staff stepped in to separate them. Susan was left standing alone, humiliated, feeling powerless in a place that was supposed to be her escape. That same night, everything changed. A piercing alarm ripped through the ship, followed by the captain's shaken voice over the loudspeaker. "Is there any Navy SEAL on board?" Panic spread. Then a young flight attendant froze. She remembered the woman from cabin 814, the quiet one, the one who had said she was a Navy SEAL. She ran to Susan's door and knocked. Inside, Susan woke instantly, her body already shifting into something colder, sharper. The ship was in danger. And despite the insults, despite the humiliation, despite everything, she was the only one who could stop what was coming. What happened next shocked everyone on board, and the man who thought he could break her. But before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Now let's understand how this story really began. 6 years. That was how long it had been since Master Chief Susan White had allowed herself more than 4 uninterrupted hours of sleep without maintaining at least one defensive contingency within arm's reach. Habits like that didn't fade with retirement paperwork. They calcified. They became bone. The Emerald Horizon cut through the Pacific with the steady displacement of a floating city, its hull humming at a frequency most passengers would never consciously register. Susan did. The vibration traveled up through the soles of her shoes, into her ankles, through the tibia, consistent, predictable, mechanically sound. No cavitation, no fluctuation. The ship was healthy. That mattered to her more than the welcome champagne she had refused at embarkation. Cabin 814 was down a quiet corridor, insulated from the noise of the promenade decks. She unlocked the door, entered, and immediately closed it behind her, engaging the deadbolt with a precise, practiced turn. Her duffel bag hit the carpeted floor with a dull thud. Not a suitcase, never a suitcase. Duffels didn't break under pressure. The suite was expensive in the way corporations liked to advertise. Polished wood, indirect lighting, abstract art chosen by committee. Susan gave it a single sweep of her eyes, already mapping exits, blind spots, load-bearing walls, the balcony door, the bathroom, the bed positioned with its headboard against an interior wall. Acceptable. She removed her jacket, then her shoes, lining them up parallel to the wall. Her movements were economical, stripped of wasted motion. As she peeled off her travel clothes, the scars emerged, thin, white lines crossing muscle and skin, some surgical, some not. A puckered entry wound near the ribs, old shrapnel damage along the shoulder, none of it dramatic. Just history written quietly on flesh. She stepped into the marble bathroom and turned the shower handle. There was a low groan from the pipes, a hollow rattle behind the wall, and then silence. Susan stood there for a full 5 seconds, eyes fixed on the chrome fixture. She turned the handle again, slower this time. Nothing, not even a drip. Her jaws set. The muscle along the side of her face tightened, then relaxed. She exhaled through her nose, controlled, measured. In other circumstances, equipment failure triggered checklists, immediate action drills. Here, it triggered something colder, irritation layered over fatigue. She wrapped a towel around her waist and picked up the phone. Guest services answered on the second ring, a bright, rehearsed voice spilling courtesy into the receiver. Susan stated the problem clearly, concisely. No adjectives, no emotion. "We'll send someone right up, Miss White." 4 hours passed. Susan sat on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on her knees, hands loosely clasped. The room was dark now, the ship in its nighttime lighting configuration. Somewhere down the corridor, laughter leaked under doors. Ice clinked in glasses. Vacation continued. Her eyes remained open. In her world, 4 hours was an eternity. 4 hours was the window between a successful extraction and a body bag, between stabilizing a patient and calling time of death. Here, it was simply neglect. Her fingers flexed once. The knuckles blanched, then returned to normal color. She stood, walked to the door, and opened it just as footsteps approached, brisk, confident, unhurried. Michael Landon didn't knock. He pushed the door open as if it already belonged to him. He wore a white suit tailored to perfection, the fabric unwrinkled, the cut aggressive. His cologne reached her before his words did. He glanced at the bathroom, then at his watch, a Rolex catching the corridor light. "It's a minor valve issue," he said, dismissive, already bored. "Maintenance is off shift. We'll address it in KABO." Susan rose slowly to her feet. She wasn't tall, but the space around her seemed to contract as she straightened, shoulders squared without conscious effort. "I paid for a functional room," she said. Her voice was even, almost soft. "Move me, or fix it." Landon's smile twitched. His eyes skimmed her comfortable clothes, bare feet, hair still loose. The assessment took less than a second. His decision followed immediately. "Listen, sweetheart." He stepped closer. Too close. His breath carried alcohol. "We deal with entitled menopausal passengers all day. You're not special." Susan's pulse dropped. The world narrowed, sound dampened. Her pupils constricted slightly, her body shifting into a state that had once preceded violence, now held firmly in check. "I suggest you watch your tone," she said. Landon laughed, a short, sharp sound. He turned to the steward lingering nervously in the hallway. "Mark her file. Problematic. Ignore further calls from this cabin." He pointed at Susan, fingers stopping inches from her face. "Shut your mouth and enjoy the view, or I'll have you confined to quarters for harassment." The door slammed. The click of the latch echoed louder than it should have. Susan stood motionless, staring at the wood grain. Her right hand had curled into a fist without her noticing. A faint tremor ran through it. Not fear. Restraint. She locked the door. Slowly. Deliberately. Then she lay down on the bed, fully clothed, eyes open in the dark, the humiliation settling not as heat, but as ice. Anger remained, but it stayed buried beneath discipline. Susan White did not indulge emotion when physiology demanded rest. Sleep, to her, was not comfort, it was maintenance. A necessary systems reset. She lay on her back atop the covers, one arm folded across her abdomen, the other resting along her side, fingers relaxed but not limp. Her breathing slowed by design, each inhale counted, each exhale measured until the edges of awareness softened. She entered a tactical doze, the kind that never fully surrendered consciousness. Muscle tone stayed engaged. Hearing remained selectively open. The part of her brain that had once kept men alive in hostile terrain refused to disengage. At 0200 hours, the ship changed. It was subtle, imperceptible to civilians sedated by alcohol and vacation fatigue. But to Susan, the shift was immediate. The vibration traveling through the mattress altered frequency. The engine's harmonic hum dropped half a pitch, irregular, as if load distribution had changed too quickly. Her eyelids fluttered once, then stilled. Her jaw tightened a fraction. Then the alarm sounded. 7 short blasts. 1 long, general quarters. Her heart rate spiked, then stabilized within 2 beats. Adrenaline flooded her system, clean and sharp. Her eyes opened fully, pupils constricting as her brain assembled the pattern faster than conscious thought. This was not a fire drill, not a muster. This was a full ship security posture. The overhead lights shifted automatically to emergency illumination, bathing the cabin in muted amber. The air seemed to thicken. The PA system crackled, not the pre-recorded cadence of corporate reassurance, but something raw, unfiltered. Captain Thorne's voice came through, strained, breath audible between words. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your cabins. Lock your doors. This is a code red security alert. Security personnel to the bridge immediately." Susan did not move. She listened. No screaming yet, no panicked footsteps. Just the distant thud of boots striking metal decking at speed. Not loafers, not sneakers, heavy boots, load-bearing gait. Men running with equipment. Her fingers curled slightly into the bedspread, fabric tightening between them. The room smelled faintly of detergent and salt air, but beneath it, something else crept in a zone from stressed electronics. Hot metal carried through the ventilation. The PA activated again. There was hesitation this time, a breath drawn too shallow, protocol breaking under pressure, if there is. "If we have any active military personnel on board," the captain said, his voice dropping, cracking despite effort. "Specifically, special operations." God help us, is there a Navy SEAL on board? The words hung in the air, obscene in their implication. A cruise ship captain did not ask that question unless every other layer of security had already failed. Shipboard security teams were trained for disorder, piracy deterrence, limited hostile engagement. This meant they were overwhelmed or neutralized. Susan's lips pressed into a thin line. A faint muscle jumped beneath her left eye, an involuntary tic she hadn't felt in years. Outside the cabin, movement slowed, then stopped. A knock followed, not loud, not confident. Knuckles brushing wood more than striking it. "Miss White?" The voice was young, unsteady. "Susan?" Susan rose in one fluid motion, feet silent against the carpet. She paused beside the door, shoulder angled away, body stacked for balance. Her breathing never changed. "It's Sarah," the stewardess whispered, urgency fraying the edges of her words. I saw your passport when you checked in. The military ID, please." Susan rested her forehead briefly against the door, eyes closing for half a second. Not fatigue, transition. A mental switch flipping from civilian containment to operational clarity. She unlocked the door and opened it just wide enough. Sarah stood rigid in the corridor, shoes in her hands, hair pulled back too tightly as if she'd done it without a mirror. Her pupils were blown wide. Her lower lip trembled despite her effort to control it. One hand hovered near her chest, fingers flexing as though she needed to keep reminding herself to breathe. Behind her, the corridor stretched empty, emergency lights casting long shadows along the walls. Susan studied her for a heartbeat. Then she nodded once. The vacation was over. Susan opened the door fully this time. Sarah stood in the corridor as if the deck beneath her might give way at any second. Her shoulders were drawn up toward her ears, arms folded tight against her torso. Tears streaked down her face without sound, carving clean lines through hastily applied makeup. Her breathing came in shallow bursts, each inhale catching high in her chest before she forced it down again. "They have the bridge," Sarah whispered. The words barely cleared her lips. "Men with masks, they took the engine room too." Her throat worked as she swallowed, eyes darting once toward the far end of the corridor. "They're going to kill the captain if he doesn't open the vault." Susan didn't react outwardly. No widening of the eyes, no sharp intake of breath. Only the faint tightening at the corners of her mouth, a minute shift of posture as her weight redistributed evenly over both feet. "Who is they?" she asked. As Sarah spoke, Susan reached up and gathered her hair. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, twisting it tight, pulling it back into a severe bun anchored low against her skull. The motion was automatic, functional, symbolic. Civilian affectations stripped away. "Mercenaries," Sarah said. "They boarded from a supply boat. About an hour ago." Her voice cracked. Security tried to contain them in the galley, but she shook her head, a sharp, helpless movement. "They're pinned down." Susan stepped back into the cabin without another word. She knelt by her duffel bag and unzipped it fully. No rifle, no armor, no coms. Retirement had taken care of that. What remained was discipline. She pulled out a roll of industrial-grade duct tape, the adhesive still stiff and unused. A heavy-duty flashlight followed, anodized aluminum scarred from prior service. Then the knife compact, folding, matte black, the edge honed to surgical sharpness. She flicked it open once, testing the action. The steel whispered. Her thumb brushed along the blade's spine, stopping just short of the edge. A faint line appeared in the pad of her thumb. She welcomed the sting. It sharpened focus. "Where is Michael Landon?" she asked. Sarah hesitated, then answered. "Staff laundry room. Deck 4. Her lips pressed together before she continued. "He has the master key card. For the system overrides." Susan closed the knife with a muted click and clipped it inside her waistband. Her gaze lifted to Sarah's face, taking in the dilated pupils, the tremor in her hands, the strain in her jaw where she was grinding her teeth without realizing it. "Take me to him," Susan said, quietly. They moved through the service corridors, bypassing public areas. The lighting was dimmer here, utilitarian. The air smelled of detergent and hot metal. Susan led without appearing to hurry, her steps silent. Her head moving in controlled arcs as she cleared corners, checked reflections in stainless steel panels, tracked shadows. She walked heel to toe, minimizing sound, shoulders loose, hands free. Sarah struggled to match the pace. Her heels clicked once, too loud. Susan stopped instantly, fist raised. Sarah froze, breath held, eyes wide. Susan reached back and made a simple downward gesture. "Shoes off." Sarah obeyed, wincing as her bare feet met the cold deck plating. They continued. When they reached the laundry room, Susan didn't slow. She adjusted her stance, planted her foot just below the handle, and drove forward with controlled force. The lock gave way with a sharp crack. Michael Landon shrieked. He was crouched behind a mound of linen carts, clutching a half-empty bottle of scotch to his chest like a talisman. Sweat soaked through his pristine white suit, dark patches blooming beneath the arms and along the spine. His hair was disheveled, one side flattened where he had pressed his head against the bulkhead. He looked up and saw Susan. "You," he gasped, scrambling backward until he hit the wall. "What are you doing?" His voice pitched high, brittle. "We're under attack! Get out!" Susan stepped over the scattered linens without breaking stride. In the emergency lighting, her shadow stretched long across the floor. She seemed to fill the room. "The captain asked for a seal, Mr. Landon," she said evenly. "I'm answering the call." His mouth fell open. His eyes flicked over her, searching for the joke that wasn't there. "You?" he spat. "The spinster from 814? Susan stopped an arm's length from him. "Get up!" The words were quiet, absolute. Something in her tone bypassed his panic and struck deeper. His body responded before his ego could object. He started to rise, then faltered. "I'm not going anywhere!" he cried. "It's suicide!" Susan closed the distance in one step. She seized the lapels of his suit, fabric tearing slightly under her grip, and hauled him upright with a strength that emptied the color from his face. His feet barely found purchase on the deck. "You wanted to be the director?" she said, her voice low, controlled. Her eyes never left his. Direct. She released him only once he was standing. We're going to the bridge. Reaching the bridge meant avoiding the main arteries of the ship. The primary elevators were no longer neutral space. Susan could hear them cycling out of sequence, doors opening and closing under armed supervision. Voices echoed short commands in a foreign cadence, clipped and efficient. Gunman. Susan adjusted course without hesitation. She forced Landon toward a narrow access panel marked Authorized Personnel Only. With a sharp twist, she popped it open and pushed him inside the ventilation maintenance shaft. The space was cramped, ribbed metal coated with years of grease and airborne dust. Heat lingered, trapped and stale. Move, she whispered. Landon dropped to his hands and knees. His white suit was ruined almost instantly, fabric darkening as grime smeared into the fibers. Each forward motion scraped his knees against metal, drawing a strangled whine from his throat. His breathing became uneven, bordering on hyperventilation. "Shut up," Susan murmured from behind him, her voice barely louder than the hum of the ship's systems. "Or I leave you here for them to find." The words landed. Landon clamped his mouth shut, though a thin, involuntary sound still escaped through his nose. His hands trembled as he crawled. Susan followed with fluid precision, placing her weight where the metal would not resonate. Her movements were controlled, economical. Sweat gathered at her hairline, but her breathing remained steady, each inhale timed with the ship's mechanical rhythm. They emerged near the bridge through a secondary access point adjoining the server room. Susan eased the panel open and froze. Through the glass partition, the bridge lay exposed. 4 hostiles, masked, body armor, assault rifles held with professional familiarity. Their stance gave them away former military or trained by someone who was. Heavy weaponry inside a ship's nerve center spoke of confidence, not desperation. Captain Thorne was on his knees near the central console. His hands were interlaced behind his head, fingers locked tight enough for the knuckles to blanch. A pistol pressed against his temple. Sweat ran down his face in steady streams, soaking into the collar of his uniform. Susan's jaw set. She tapped the glass once, lightly, not to draw attention, just enough. Captain Thorne flinched, then looked toward the sound. His eyes widened as they found her in the shadows. He took in her posture first, squared shoulders, balanced stance, stillness under pressure. Recognition followed, not of her face but of what she was. She raised 2 fingers, then angled them toward the floor. "Stay down." She pointed subtly toward his console. Susan slid to the terminal inside the server room. The screen glowed softly, diagnostic data scrolling. She moved her hands across the interface with practiced familiarity, bypassing security layers meant to deter amateurs. Her fingers flew, precise, controlled. Within seconds, she rerouted internal communications, isolating a private channel and patching audio directly to the captain's earpiece. "Captain," her voice came through, low and even, calm steel. "I'm the asset you asked for. I have eyes on 4 tangos. I can clear the room." On the bridge, Thorne's breath hitched. His eyes closed for a fraction of a second, lashes wet. "Thank God," he whispered, lips barely moving. "Please, help us." Susan shifted her weight, eyes never leaving the hostiles. One paced. Another adjusted his grip. No one was relaxed. They were waiting for something. "I have one condition," she said. She glanced down. Landon was collapsed on the floor beside her, back against the server rack, chest heaving. His suit was unrecognizable, now stained, torn, streaked with grease. His hands were curled inward, fingers shaking uncontrollably. "Anything," Thorne replied without hesitation. "I have Director Landon with me," Susan said. Her gaze lingered on him for a beat longer than necessary. "He seems to think I'm an incompetent, spoiled child. When this is over, I want a formal, public apology." She paused. Let it settle. And I want him to admit on the ship's PA system that he is a coward who failed his passengers. Thorne didn't hesitate. Done, he said immediately. Just save my ship. Susan ended the transmission. She crouched in front of Landon. His eyes flicked up to her, bloodshot, rimmed with fear. A muscle jumped uncontrollably along his cheek. You hear that, Michael? She said quietly. You're about to be famous. She placed the heavy-duty flashlight into his trembling hand and closed his fingers around it with deliberate pressure. You're the distraction. I'm what? The sound that left Michael Landon's throat was thin, almost ultrasonic, a reflexive squeak that betrayed how little control he had left over his own body. His grip tightened around the flashlight Susan had forced into his hand, knuckles whitening as his fingers trembled. Susan didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You're going to walk out that door, she said, extending one finger toward the side entrance of the bridge. Her arm was steady, elbow locked, the gesture precise. You're going to act exactly like the man you were in my cabin. Loud, entitled, demanding. Her eyes never left his. You will insist on speaking to their leader. You will complain about the noise. Landon swallowed. His Adam's apple bobbed violently. His pupils were blown wide, breath hitching shallowly in his chest, as if his lungs had forgotten how to draw a full breath. They'll shoot me, he whispered. Susan tilted her head a fraction. The movement was subtle, almost curious, but her jaw tightened. A faint muscle flickered beneath her left eye. If you don't go, she replied, her tone flat, clinical, I will render you unconscious and throw you through that door myself. She leaned closer, lowering her voice further. At least this way, you have a statistical chance of surviving. Her hand came down hard between his shoulder blades. Move! Landon stumbled forward, momentum carrying him through the doorway before his mind could catch up. He emerged onto the bridge, blinking against the harsh overhead lighting. His senses overwhelmed by noise, smoke, and the sharp chemical tang of overheated electronics. 4 masked men turned instantly. Weapons came up in unison, muzzles aligned center mass. Fingers found triggers. Landon froze. For half a second, his body locked in total motor failure. Then panic surged through him, ugly and uncontrolled. Hey! He shouted, voice cracking high, hysteria bleeding through every syllable. Hey! Do you have any idea how much this carpet costs? He gestured wildly at the deck beneath their boots, the flashlight swinging uselessly in his hand. You're destroying the aesthetic. The words echoed across the bridge, absurd and grotesquely out of place amid the tension. The weapons, the hostage kneeling on the floor. The mercenaries hesitated, not out of mercy, out of confusion. One tilted his head slightly, as if trying to parse the stimulus. Another flicked a glance toward his partner, brows knitting beneath the mask. The man holding the captain shifted his grip, momentarily distracted by the intrusion of pure civilian irrationality into a controlled, hostile environment. 2 seconds Susan moved. She didn't draw a firearm. She didn't shout. She didn't hesitate. She exploded from the shadowed threshold of the server room, body low, center of gravity forward, closing distance faster than the eye could fully track. Her first strike was silent and catastrophic. Her forearm drove upward beneath the nearest mercenary's jaw, compressing the trachea against the cervical spine. Cartilage collapsed with a dull, wet sound. The man dropped without a cry, airway destroyed before his brain could register pain. Susan caught his falling rifle before it hit the deck. The motion flowed seamlessly into a pivot. She brought the weapon up, cheek barely brushing the stock, and fired twice-controlled center mass shots. The second mercenary jerked as the rounds impacted, body armor absorbing the first hit before failing under the second. He collapsed backward into the console, sparks cascading around him. The remaining 2 reacted instantly, training overriding surprise. They swung their weapons toward her position, but she was already moving. Susan dropped behind the captain's console, the bulkhead absorbing incoming fire as rounds chewed through glass and plastic. Alarms screamed as systems shorted out. She felt one round pass close enough to disturb the air beside her cheek. Her breathing remained even. Across the bridge, Landon finally found his legs. He screamed a raw animal sound and dove beneath the navigation table, curling into himself, arms clamped over his head, the flashlight clattering uselessly across the floor. Susan rose again, adjusting her angle, eyes tracking muzzle flashes, mind calculating trajectories and timing. The bridge had become a kill box, but she controlled the geometry now. The distraction had worked. The bridge had become a confined kill zone, its clean lines shattered into chaos. Safety glass lay fractured across the deck, crunching underfoot. Consoles spat sparks in irregular bursts, the acrid smell of burning insulation hanging in the air. Emergency lighting strobed red against steel bulkheads, turning every shadow into a threat vector. Susan moved through it with ruthless efficiency. Her posture never broke. Knees flexed, shoulders squared, rifled tight into the pocket of her shoulder. She advanced laterally, slicing the pie around the shattered navigation console. Muzzled tracking before her eyes fully committed. Her breathing was slow, metronomic 4-count in, 4-count out, unaffected by the incoming fire. She checked her angle. Pop pop. 2 rounds, controlled cadence. The third mercenary dropped where he stood, momentum carrying him backward into a bank of monitors. The screens went black on impact, alarms dying mid-wail. Only one remained. He was larger than the others, built thick through the chest and shoulders, the kind of mass that came from years of violence rather than vanity. A jagged scar ran from beneath his ear down into his collar, pale against flushed skin. His eyes were bloodshot, jaw clenched so hard the muscle jumped beneath his beard. He lunged for Captain Thorne. The captain barely had time to gasp before an arm locked around his throat, dragging him upright. The mercenary wrenched him back, pressing the muzzle of his rifle beneath the captain's jaw. Thorne's hands came up instinctively, fingers clawing at empty air, breath trapped high in his chest. "Drop it!" the mercenary roared. Spittle flecked his beard as his finger tightened on the trigger. "Or the old man dies." Susan stopped, not abruptly, not in panic. She let the rifle lower, barrel angling toward the deck. Her stance remained balanced, weight evenly distributed, ready to move. A faint pulse throbbed once at her temple. Her eyes never left the man holding the captain. Her breathing didn't change. "You're making a mistake," she said. Her voice was calm, uninflected, carrying across the ruined bridge without effort. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. "I said drop it," he shouted again, tightening his grip. Captain Thorne's face had gone a mottled red, veins standing out along his neck as he fought for air. Susan took one slow step forward, then stopped. "Look at me," she said. The command cut through the noise. The mercenary's eyes flicked to her despite himself. She tilted her head slightly, just enough for the light to catch her face. Her gaze was steady, almost clinical, as if she were examining a familiar pathology. "Busra," she continued, 2014. Night extraction at the Al Fajr refinery. The mercenary blinked, his brow furrowed. His breathing stuttered once, barely perceptible. His grip on the captain tightened reflexively, then loosened again as memory clawed its way to the surface. Susan watched it happen. "You were perimeter security," she said. "Contracted through a shell company in Cyprus. You lost 3 men in under 90 seconds. The color drained from his face. He stared at her now, really seeing her, eyes widening as recognition slammed into him with visceral force. His mouth opened slightly, the words escaping as a whisper. "The White Widow?" Susan didn't react to the name. She never did. "Let him go, Markov," she said, using his surname like a scalpel. "And I might allow you to leave this ship in handcuffs instead of a body bag." The shift was immediate. Fear replaced adrenaline. His pupils dilated. His breathing grew shallow, erratic. The legend, the interrogator, the operator who didn't raise her voice and didn't press down on him heavier than any weapon. His forearm slackened by a fraction. It was enough. Susan didn't fire. Her hands snapped to her thigh, fingers closing around cold steel. In one fluid motion, she threw. The combat knife left her hand spinning end over end, trajectory true. It struck Markov high in the shoulder, burying itself deep. He screamed, the sound torn and involuntary, rifle clattering to the deck as his grip failed. Captain Thorne collapsed forward, sucking in air, hands braced against the console as he fought to stay upright. Susan was already moving. She crossed the distance in seconds, driving Markov face first to the deck, knee between his shoulder blades. He struggled weakly, pain and shock robbing him of coordination. She wrenched his arms behind his back, cinching the zip tie tight until his wrists went numb. Only when he was secured did she rise. The bridge went still. The alarms died down. Smoke drifted lazily toward the ceiling vents. Captain Thorne sagged against the console, coughing, eyes wet and unfocused but alive. Susan stood alone at the center of the wreckage, chest rising and falling with quiet precision. The ship was silent again. Susan didn't answer right away. The question trembled out from beneath the navigation table, muffled by carpet and fear, but it didn't alter her tempo. She was already moving, scanning, counting bodies, letting the aftershock of violence settle into something usable. The bridge smelled of ionized air and burned insulation. A console sparked weakly near the helm, each crackle reflected in the glassy stare of a mercenary sprawled face down by the bulkhead. She reached Captain Thorne first. Her hand closed around his forearm, not gently, not roughly, but with calibrated pressure, and guided him upright. He swayed. His pupils were blown wide, breath shallow. The thin skin at his throat fluttering where the mercenary's grip had been seconds from collapse. "Are you injured, sir?" Susan asked. Her eyes never left his hands. Shock made people do stupid things. Thorne swallowed. His Adam's apple bobbed hard. No, he managed. His gaze drifted past her shoulder, fixed on the bodies, and the blood streaked across the deck. On the woman standing between him and death, dressed like she'd stepped out of a morning wellness class. Who are you?" Susan released him only after she was satisfied he could stand. She crouched beside the nearest downed gunman, 2 fingers pressed to the carotid, counting. Strong pulse. Alive. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Master Chief Susan White, United States Navy. Retired. She rose smoothly. "We're not done." Thorne flinched at the word we. "Done with what?" "There's a secondary element," Susan said. "Engine room. Likely sabotage or hostage control." She turned, already moving. This was never a single-point operation. She crossed the bridge in 6 measured steps and stopped beside the navigation table. With the side of her boot, she kicked one leg sharp, controlled, just enough to rattle the man hiding beneath. "Get up, Landon," she said. "We have more work to do." There was a pause. Then a pair of trembling hands appeared, followed by Landon's face, pale and slick with sweat. He crawled out on his knees, blinking like someone dragged out of deep water. His eyes flicked from one fallen mercenary to the next, then back to Susan. Whatever arrogance had animated him hours earlier was gone. In its place sat something fragile and absolute, awe edged with terror. His mouth opened, closed. He tried again, "I thought. You were..." Susan didn't let him finish. She turned him by the shoulder toward a still-functioning monitor. "Security feeds. I need eyes." "I don't." "You do," she said, flat. "You've been routing cameras and passenger analytics all week. This is no different." She leaned in just enough for him to catch the steel in her gaze. "Tell me where they are." His fingers hovered over the controls, shaking. A tick jumped at the corner of his left eye as he forced himself to focus. Engine room. There's interference. They're jamming. Wait, he swallowed hard, breathing through his nose. Thermal overlay still works. 2? No. 3 heat signatures near the aft turbines. Armed? Landon nodded too fast. Yes. Good. Susan reached down and picked up a fallen radio, wiping blood from the handset with her sleeve. She keyed the mic, listening. Static. Then a clipped voice speaking a language she knew well enough to parse without translating. Short commands. Tight discipline. Professionals. She turned back to Thorne. Captain, lock the bridge. Hard seal, no one in or out. Thorne hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but it passed. He moved to the console, hands steadier now, fingers flying as muscle memory returned. The bulkhead doors slid shut with a hydraulic thud that echoed like a verdict. Susan checked her knife gun, buried deep where it needed to be. She resecured her grip on the captured rifle, tested the weight, the balance. Her breathing slowed, fell into rhythm. She paused at the door, listening, feeling the ship beneath her feet. The hum of engines, the distance to the next contact. Then she looked back once more. Don't blink, she said to Landon. And without another word, Susan White stepped out of the bridge and went hunting. The engine room swallowed sound and light alike. Steam hissed from pressure lines, fogging the air with a damp heat that clung to the skin. Steel bulkheads loomed in every direction, stained with oil and age, vibrating with the low, constant thrum of the ship's turbines. It was a confined, dangerous space, one bad decision away from catastrophe. Susan moved along the upper catwalk without a wasted step. Her boots found the grating by instinct, weight distributed, knees soft. The rifle stayed low, muzzle tracking where her eyes had already been. Condensation beaded along the railings, dripping and slow. Irregular rhythms that masked smaller sounds, breathing, fabric shifting, the subtle click of a safety being tested. Landon's voice crackled through her earpiece. 2 on the lower deck, he said, the words tight, measured, forced through a throat that wanted to seize, 1 by the pressure valves. Susan, be careful. There it was. No title, no sarcasm, just her name. She didn't react outwardly, but something in her jaw set, locking the moment away for later, if later came. She eased down the ladder, every rung tested before committing weight. On the lower deck, one mercenary stood with his back turned, weapon slung, attention on a diagnostic panel. Susan closed the distance in 3 silent strides. Her forearm slid under his chin, lifting, compressing the carotid just enough. His boot scraped once against steel. Her other hand braced the back of his skull. He went limp without a sound. She lowered him carefully, controlling the fall, and moved on. The second sentry heard something, just enough to turn his head. His eyes widened a fraction. Susan was already inside his reach. A short elbow to the sternum collapsed his breath. Her knee followed, precise, destructive. He folded. She caught him before he hit the deck, easing him down beside a fuel conduit. Alive, unconscious. She paused, listening. Her breathing was slow, nasal, controlled. The ship's system spoke around up pressure cycling, turbines spooling, alarms dormant but ready. A firefight here would be suicidal. 1 ruptured line, 1 spark in the wrong place, and the engine room would become a coffin for everyone aboard. She advanced toward the central platform. That was when she saw the charges. 2 mercenaries worked fast, efficient, movements practiced. Shaped explosives were already magnetized to structural supports near the main turbines. Detonation cords snaked across the deck, fingers tightening knots with gloved hands. This wasn't intimidation. It was scuttling. Sink the ship, vanish in the chaos. Susan checked her angles. Too much open space, too many variables. Silent takedowns were no longer an option. Her teeth pressed together. Time compressed. She thumbed the com. Landon, yes? The reply came instantly. I need you to blow the horn, she whispered. Now. A beat. What? Why? Do it, she said. Her voice cut clean, stripped of explanation. Now. The delay felt endless. Then the ship's horn erupted above them, a brutal, bone-rattling blast that tore through steel and air alike. The sound vibrated through the engine room, through bone and teeth, disorienting, overwhelming. The mercenaries recoiled instinctively, hands flying to their ears, heads snapping up in confusion. Susan dropped. She released the catwalk and hit the deck hard, rolling through the impact, coming up inside their perimeter. Her elbow smashed into one man's jaw before he could recover. Cartilage cracked. He went down. The second swung blindly. She stepped inside the arc, drove a knee into his thigh, then his ribs. He collapsed with a grunt that vanished under the dying echo of the horn. 30 seconds. Less. The room fell back into its mechanical hum. Susan moved immediately to the charges. Her fingers worked the detonators, cutting, isolating, disarming with hands that never shook. Sweat ran down her temple, stinging a shallow cut along her cheek. She wiped it away with the back of her wrist, leaving a smear of red. When it was done, she sat on a crate, back straight, breathing steady. The engine room no longer felt like a trap, just another cleared space. She raised the radio. "Bridge," she said. "Engine room secure. Explosives disarmed. The ship is safe." She let the words hang for a moment, then lowered the mic. Sunrise crept over the horizon in a thin band of pale gold, washing the ocean in muted light. The night's violence felt unreal now, reduced to evidence tape and guarded doorways, whose Coast Guard helicopters circled overhead in slow, deliberate orbits. Rotor wash rippling the sea and snapping flags along the upper decks. Their presence was calm, procedural authority restored. One by one, passengers were released from their cabins. They moved cautiously at first, shoes soft against the deck, voices low, eyes darting. Many still clutched blankets, phones, half-finished drinks from the night before. Rumors traveled faster than the breeze. Whispers of masked men. Explosions that never came. A woman who had walked through gunfire alone. They gathered on the main Leto deck, filling the open space in uneven clusters. Faces tilted upward as attention shifted to the small raised stage near the bridge access. Captain Thorne stood there in his formal uniform, shoulders squared, posture rigid from hours of delayed adrenaline. Beside him stood Susan. She hadn't changed. Her clothes were stiff with dried blood, not all of it hers. A dark bruise bloomed along her cheekbone, fading into yellow at the edges. One sleeve was torn at the seam, exposing a forearm marked with old scars that told their own quiet history. She stood with her feet shoulder-width apart, hands relaxed at her sides, eyes scanning the crowd without curiosity. She looked less like a passenger and more like a sentry. Captain Thorne lifted the microphone. His fingers tightened around it before he spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying cleanly across the deck. "Last night, this vessel was targeted by an organized, armed group. Because of swift action and extraordinary courage, the threat was neutralized. You are safe." A murmur rolled through the crowd, swelling, breaking into scattered applause before settling again. "We are standing here this morning," Thorne continued, "because of one passenger, a retired United States Navy Master Chief, Susan White." The applause came hard and fast this time, a wall of sound. People leaned forward, clapping until their palms stung. Some cried openly, others shouted thanks, voices cracking with relief. Susan raised one hand. The sound faded unevenly, like surf retreating from shore. She stepped closer to the microphone. Her expression didn't change. No smile, no nod, just a steady gaze. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was calm, unembellished, amplified without warmth. "But before I return to my vacation, there is unfinished business." A subtle shift rippled through the crowd. Eyes followed where she turned. Michael Landon stood off to the side of the stage, freshly groomed, hair immaculate, white suit pressed to perfection. He had positioned himself carefully, half-shadowed, peripheral, anonymous. At the sound of his name, his shoulders jerked almost imperceptibly. "Director Landon," Susan said. "Step forward." He didn't move at first. His jaw worked. A muscle jumped near his left eye. Around him, passengers turned, recognition dawning, curiosity sharpening into something colder. Landon stepped forward. The distance to the center of the stage felt longer than it was. His shoes clicked too loudly against the deck. He stopped beside Susan, hands clasped in front of him, fingers whitening as they tightened. "Tell them," Susan said. She didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Landon reached for the microphone. His hand hesitated an inch away, then closed around it. The metal trembled faintly. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat, swallowing hard. "I would like to apologize to Miss White." Susan's head tilted a fraction. "Louder," she said, "and tell them why." Landon's chest rose sharply, his breath stalled halfway out. When he spoke again, the words came stripped bare. "I judged Miss White by her appearance," he said. "I refused to address her concerns. I dismissed her. I called her spoiled. I called her irrelevant." A bead of sweat slid down his temple. "I was wrong," he continued, voice breaking. I froze. I hid under a table while she confronted armed men and saved this ship. I am a coward." Silence fell. It wasn't stunned silence or polite restraint. It was heavy, deliberate. Hundreds of eyes fixed on Landon, stripping him of Polish and title alike. Disgust showed in tightened mouths, in crossed arms, in the way people leaned away from him as if cowardice were contagious. Susan took the microphone back and stepped forward. "That's all," she said. She handed the mic to the captain, turned, and walked off the stage, alone boots steady, spine straight, gaze forward, leaving the applause behind her, unclaimed. The response from corporate headquarters came faster than anyone expected. By the time the ship altered course toward its next port of call, legal counsel had already reviewed the bridge audio, the internal security footage, and most damning of all the recorded public admission broadcast over the PA system. There was no ambiguity to litigate, no narrative to sanitize. Michael Landon's words were clean, unedited, and final. He was terminated before sunrise. The decision was transmitted directly to the bridge and copied to ship security, human resources, and the cruise line's executive risk committee. Termination for gross misconduct, dereliction of duty. Conduct unbecoming of an officer entrusted with passenger safety. The language was clinical, absolute. When the ship docked at the next port, Landon was escorted down the gangway by 2 uniformed security officers. No announcement accompanied his removal. None was necessary. The passengers recognized him instantly. The man who once strode the decks with theatrical authority now carried his own luggage, shoulders hunched, jaw clenched so tightly a muscle jumped near his ear. A few jeers cut through the air. Someone laughed short, sharp, humorless. Landon did not look up. He kept walking, each step stiff, controlled, until he disappeared into the terminal, stripped of title, relevance, and protection. Susan White did not watch. She had already been reassigned quietly, efficiently, to the owner's suite. The relocation was handled with the same discretion afforded to high-net-worth individuals and foreign dignitaries. No fanfare. No apology delivered aloud. The apology was architectural. The suite occupied a privileged section of the ship, isolated, silent. The carpet absorbed sound. The doors closed with a muted, airtight seal. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the ocean like a moving mural, endless and indifferent. The bed was turned down with military precision, corners crisp, lines exact. Someone had placed her duffel bag on a luggage stand, squared perfectly to the wall. Susan acknowledged none of it immediately. She moved through the space methodically, performing a subconscious clearance checking sight lines, exits, reflections in glass. Only after that did her shoulders ease a fraction. The mission was complete. The environment was secure. That evening, she entered the bathroom. It was expansive, opulent without being loud. Gold-plated fixtures caught the warm light. Steam curled gently from a jacuzzi tub the size of a small pool. The air smelled faintly of eucalyptus and polished stone. She reached for the shower control and turned it with deliberate pressure. Water thundered down from the rainfall head, heavy and hot, striking tile with a steady, enveloping roar. Steam filled the room almost instantly, softening edges, blurring reflections. A knock came at the door. Susan paused. Her hand remained on the handle for half a second longer than necessary before she shut the water off and wrapped a towel around her shoulders. She opened the door. Sarah stood in the corridor, posture straight but tentative, both hands occupied with a silver tray. A bottle of vintage champagne rested in its cradle, condensation beating along the glass. Beside it sat a folded note, thick cardstock, embossed. "Compliments of the captain, ma'am," Sarah said. Her voice held steadier now than it had the night before. Her eyes shone, not with fear, but with something earned, and "Thank you for everything." Susan studied her for a moment. She noted the way Sarah's fingers tightened on the tray, the way her breath caught and released, waiting. Susan inclined her head just once and accepted the glass. Sarah smiled. It was small, real. When Susan stepped onto the private balcony, the ocean breeze met her immediately, cool against skin still warm from the steam. The horizon stretched unbroken, the sun sinking into it with quiet finality. The ship cut forward through the water, engines humming at a steady, repaired cadence. She raised the glass, took a measured sip. The champagne was sharp, dry, precise. It grounded her. For the first time in 6 years, her breathing slowed without effort. No perimeter to hold, no threat matrix running behind her eyes. Her shoulders lowered. The tension that had lived in her jaw eased. She exhaled fully, long, controlled, complete. Susan White stood alone on the balcony, not as a dismissed passenger, not as a middle-aged inconvenience, but as what she had always been. A Navy SEAL. Quiet, professional, vindicated. If you want more stories like this where discipline, justice, and quiet strength prevail, subscribe to the channel and stay with us.